Good morning. Thank you for joining myself and Rep. Batista for a press conference to discuss three major issues that are facing the port right now, South Providence and Washington Park neighborhoods. This is a community that is made up of primarily Black and brown and low-income Rhode Islanders here in Providence. And unfortunately, this neighborhood and this community has been treated as a hotbed of social services and a hotbed of environmental issues and injustices right here in our communities. This neighborhood has some of the highest asthma rates in our nation. Right now, there are folks with the Childhood Lead Action Project who are going door to door to make sure neighbors know that there are state resources to change their lead pipes. Some of the highest rates of lead poisoning in children right here in South Providence. And additionally, there have been so many proposed environmental projects right here in the Port of Providence. If you look behind us, the expansion of Rhode Island Recycling Metals, which has multiple infractions and has thousands of dollars worth of violations right here in people's backyards. This is also the site where where facilities like the liquefied natural gas LNG facility has been proposed, a waste transfer facility that would have brought in tens of thousands of pounds of debris into this neighborhood was proposed. There was also an oil spill in here not too long ago, right here in this neighborhood. Additionally, a school was closed without community input and without community say and engagement. Another rumor has been started that there's also going to be an introduction of a homeless shelter right here in this neighborhood. No community say, no community resources. The time is past due for the community and neighbors of the South Providence and Washington Park neighborhoods to be meaningfully engaged by community leaders and state officials in these projects. Their voices matter, their communities matter, the livelihoods of their children matter. The opportunities available for them to meaningfully engage with state officials matters. The messaging that we get from state officials when projects are proposed without meaningful community engagement is that neighbors don't care, residents aren't smart enough to engage with their local elected officials, that they're not smart enough to engage with state entities, and that they don't care about what their neighborhoods look like. This part of Providence could be beautiful, except they have used this as a dumping ground for big polluters in the port, big industries in the port who don't care about the well-being, the healthy, the safe, and the public health impacts it has on our children and on the communities that live right here. If you look across the port, there's a beautiful bike path that goes from Providence to Bristol. That same reality doesn't exist for the poor neighbors that live right across from it and can see if they can pass through the scrap yard metal and through the recycling plant. They can see that their neighborhoods aren't given the same respect and dignity as neighbors right across this port. And so it's just about time that we ask for the state officials to pause these plans, the closure of their school, the expansion of Rhode Island Recycling Metals, and a proposed homeless shelter right here, so they can meaningfully engage in robust conversation with communities, with neighbors, and with people who call this part of Providence their home. That is all we're asking for, a conversation and meaningful engagement with these neighbors who know that their part of Providence that they call home matters and is worthy of respect, dignity, and a beautiful place right here on the Port of Providence. Thank you, and I want to welcome our next speaker and my partner in the state legislature, José Batista.
Thank you. Can I give you a hug? So thank you, everybody, for being here. I want to recognize some of the folks here, our community members, our supporters, Senator, obviously my partner in this district, Senator Tiara Mack. I want to thank you very much for working with us. Senator Ana Quezada, who's here, thank you very much. The president of the NAACP, Mr. Gerard, Catala, the immediate past president, Mr. Jim Vincent, and all the members of the community, thank you very much for being here. I think it's safe to say the year 2023 for our community has not gotten off to the best start. In fact, immediately before beginning 2023, we learned around Christmas time about a decision made behind closed doors with no input from the community to close a precious asset in our district. Shawn Feinstein Elementary School currently services about 250 families, and while there may be a number of conversations about how old the school is or how we want to build new schools, the reality is that that decision was made without the community, and that is not okay. We've been working on this issue for several months. On the one hand, I am grateful for all of the members of the state delegation that have opened the doors to Senator Mack and I. On the other hand, we are not satisfied with the answers that we've heard so far. And we're calling on the state to halt the closure of Allen Shawn Feinstein Elementary School. There are some that say something like this cannot be done. However, we have examples in this very district, in the immediate recent past, of government coming together with the community to make a different decision. In just a few moments, you'll hear from one of the members of our community, one of the leaders of our community, Monica Huertas of the People's Port Authority, who was instrumental in delaying an agreement that happened here because it did not happen with the community. That's the sort of collaboration we're hoping to engage with the state. We thank the city for being forthright in that effort. We thank the community for being forthright in that effort. And that's exactly what we're trying to do now. That is an issue we've been working on for months, and we will continue to work on. It wasn't until last week that we are receiving news from Twitter and the internet regarding Rhode Island Recycled Metals, an entity that has been tied up in litigation for over 10 years. And as if that's not bad enough, we woke up one morning last week to find out that this entity is actually expanding. And while I've read that the entity is considering no longer operating in scrap metal, that's not good enough. As Senator Mack said, we deserve the best. This community matters. This community is the one I've lived in my entire 35 years of life. We deserve to have the opportunity to develop businesses just as we have a few yards across the way. And at a bottom line, I understand we won't agree on everything, but this community has the ability and the obligation to contribute to these decisions. We will not be left behind. Senator Mack and I were elected in 2020 on the idea of changing the narrative in this district, of showing that this district is not abandoned. There are people here who represent this district. There are people here who are proud of this district. We matter. We want to be included. We demand to be included. There will be no decisions made in this district without the community. The third and alarming measure that's happened recently is, I know perhaps there not have been made any decisions yet, but we've learned that there is a prime building in our district, 1144 Eddy Street, that has appeared on a list as an option for a shelter of transitional living. Our community is a compassionate community, is an egalitarian community, but we cannot make these sort of decisions without the community. And we are not going to sit around and wait until we learn that a decision has been made before we input the community. We are grateful for our partners at the state. We've had a number of conversations with the Attorney General's office, Rhode Island DEM, the Governor's office, and we will continue to do that. However, we are here to make crystal clear that any decision that has to do with this community must involve the community, especially through the people's representatives, Senator Mack and I. There's too much that's happened, and Senator Mack and I have been relegated to learning about things happening in our community via Twitter. That is unacceptable. To the extent that whatever is happening today is legal, we can change the laws. I do not accept that nothing can be done about the closure of Allen Shawn Feinstein, about the expansion of Rhode Island Recycled Metals, and about any sort of prospect of development taking here without our input. And so, again, I'd like to reiterate my gratitude for everybody here. This is, while Senator Mack and I have organized this today, this is not about Senator Mack and I. In the future, there will be another senator and another representative. But we need to establish the precedent now that this community matters. We want to be involved in the development of the port. We cannot accept these things happening. There are an inordinate amount of young people in this district born with asthma as a result of this happening here, and you're looking at one of them. So I thank you very much. I would like to pass on to the next speaker, which is, I believe, the president of the Washington Park Neighborhood Association, Ms. Linda Perri.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you, Jose. Oh. Hi. Hi, everybody. Perri, Linda. And it's Washington Park Association. I'm sorry for being late because I went to Columbia Park first, as well as other people. My problem, not yours. Thank you for all being here. Being a resident of Washington Park for over 40 years, I've seen the ebb and flow of good and bad development. Not all development is good development just because somebody wants it, first and foremost. And we woke up the same as everybody to the news about Rhode Island Metals recycling, and we just went through a whole debate about the port and hoping for clean and green industry there. And I think that the people of the port are equally as disappointed as we are. Monica will speak to the other important issues, but my issue right now is to get the word out that we are not going to take it anymore. Taxation without representation. We're in Rhode Island. We have a long history of speaking up and speaking out. Well, this is our time for speaking up and speaking out. And we have no representation. We won't tolerate waking up and getting bad news like this. We were promised a robust community conversation, and we didn't get it. And for $2.3 million that land sold for, it had been for sale forever. It was on a commercial real estate listing. It had been empty. And then we find out that these people own all of it, 288, which I thought was owned by the state, all the way down to their terrible pile of mess. And they are polluting the water, polluting the air, and it is unacceptable that they are allowed to continue. And we hope that the AG's office and Save the Bay will be instrumental in making a change. And so look forward to a new day and a cleaner environment here, because we deserve it. As Jose said, we deserve better. I'm tired of looking across to East Providence and seeing how wonderful it is. There's bike paths, there's kayaking, there's music venues, and we get that. We get that and more of it. It's unacceptable. So thank you for all being here. It's time to speak up and speak out.
Good morning. My name is Katelyn Crueale. I am a parent of 2 children who now attend ASF, Allen Feinstein.
Spell your name for us, Katelyn.
Katelyn Crueale. I am a parent of 2 children who attend Allen Shawn Feinstein Elementary at Broad Street, and I am also the PTO president. I'm here today to make my voice heard and to speak up for everyone in my community who has been left out of the decision to close our neighborhood school. This school, to anyone driving by, might just be a building, might just be a school, but to the Washington Park community, it is a second home and a safe place for many. It is the one public district elementary school that serves the Washington Park community. Parents and teachers collected data, and more than 72% of students walk to school from their home and so far walk back home. My family personally lives 5 houses away from the school, and RIDE will argue we have a lack of green space, but if you walk a total of 6 minutes from the school's front door, we have access to green space and resources at Roger Williams Park, which includes the Museum of Natural History, a planetarium, Roger Williams Zoo, and so much more. Despite the importance of this school to our community, Providence Schools and the RIDE Department of Education left the community out of the decision-making process. The only reason I personally found out about the closing was on December 12th, 2022, when I thought I had a PTO meeting to finish up the plans for our Christmas event. The leaders from Providence Schools and RIDE have admitted to no meetings at all were held with the families, students, or staff of ASF until after the decision was already closed and announced. Following the announcement, other families and I have been ignored, blocked from phone calls, blocked from emails, and disrespected from RIDE and the commissioner, along with the superintendent. This closure is the worst thing to happen to my family personally. My children will have to be bused and on separate buses due to one child having an IEP. I will not know if my child, who has separation anxiety, transitioned into school well, or if he's breaking down crying, asking where mommy is. There are some families that, because they are barely under a mile away from the other school that they will now be attending due to the closure, have to walk, some of which do not have transportation. So that means rain, snow, cold, or heat, walking a little under a mile and back just to make sure their children get there safely. That also includes walking on busy streets like Allen's Ave, Broad Street, and Eddy Street. We were also told the district was unsure if crossing guards would be available to keep our children safe. For months, we have spoken up at school board meetings, RIDE meetings, and city council meetings. We've gone to the news, we've spoken at the State House. So today I'm here once again demanding that the leaders at Providence schools and Rhode Island Department of Education listen to our community and stop the closure of our school. Keep Allen Shawn Feinstein Elementary at Broad Street open, invest in our school, invest in our children. I promise you, they are our future and they will surprise you. Honestly, horrible and disgusted, because if they wanted to shut it and it was such a good idea, why they have to provide emotional support for the faculty and the students. It's horrible.
How old are your kids?
6 and 8. And I have another one starting in the fall.
How old is that?
She's 4. She'll be 5 in August. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Monica Huertas, Huertas, and I'm basically here to say I'm so sick of the state of Rhode Island ghettoizing our community. Now, they talk all this thing about Providence and how horrible it is, yet they're closing down schools. They keep on allowing these industries to expand and pollute our neighborhoods, and they keep dumping all these new things in our neighborhood without any consent or community engagement. That right there is ghettoizing our neighborhood. When we found out, by the way, I am the founding director of the People's Port Authority, and we are an environmental justice organization dedicated to stopping the expansion and new construction of fossil fuel industries and basically polluting industries here in the Port of Providence. And in November, we found out that one of the polluters, the biggest polluters, Provport, wanted to not expand again, but wanted to renew a lease that they had with the city. And this was all happening at the same time as the closure of the school, because the last city council was just pushing. Within 2 weeks of them leaving, they were pushing all these crazy bills and like 60, 50 bills at the same time. And all of this happened at the same time. And we're like, what is going on? So we got together community and went down to City Hall, and we're like, absolutely not. You guys cannot continue to propose these things and think that we're gonna just roll over, sit down, and take it. So we went down there with a bunch of community folks, and we actually stopped city council from hearing all these things right that day, like to put it on a vote that day. And so we kept on engaging the community, and ultimately Provport was allowed to extend their lease, but it wasn't without a community fight and a community resistance and a community engagement process, a quick community engagement process with the promise of further community engagement process. Now, while the Rhode Island Metals was not involved in that community process because it was Provport versus the Port of Providence, sometimes we get that confused, which is this is Provport. Provport is that way, like just a little conglomerate, but then this, all that we see here, the scrap and the tar and the cement, is all part of the Port of Providence. And so they were not involved at all, and they've never been involved with us, Rhode Island Metals, because they don't live here. They don't like to engage community. All they want to do is keep dumping their crap. And now they were allowed to expand, again, with no community process. And we're saying, how in the world do you have more than 50 violations from the Attorney General's office, and you are allowed to continue to pollute and then allowed to expand? Like, in what mind? If I don't take care of my house, somebody's from the city is gonna come to my house and ask me, why the heck am I doing X, Y, and D and Z, right? And so if I got a broken glass or a broken window in my house, they're gonna come, the city's gonna come. If somebody complains, they're gonna come and say, you know, you need to fix it, you need to cut your lawn. Why are they not held to the same standards as everybody else? And then they're continued to expand and just put more strain on the community. And now what we're saying is we want a beautiful port the way that people on the east side have it. In fact, on the east side, in East Providence, and not on the east side of Providence. In fact, years ago, they used to be even worse off than us on this side. But little by little, they cleaned that up, and then they transferred some things here or expanded some things here, and again, continued that ghettoization of our community. So anyways, it's a lot, y'all, and what we're saying is enough is enough. There's plenty of people who care about the issues here, and what we're asking is bring us in, have some respect. Treat us like you would some people in Burrillville or people in West Warwick or people in Cranston. That's it, y'all. Thank you.
So you said 50 violations. Those were with the AG's office or with DEM or who?
Both. Yeah. Monica Huertas, Huertas.
Good evening, everybody. Good morning, everyone. My name's Harrison Tuttle. I am the president of Black Lives Matter, Rhode Island Political Action Committee. I want to echo a lot of the statements that have been said here by our amazing elected officials and community advocates. But I also want to highlight a really important fact of how we got here. This is the tale of two cities. It's the tale of the people that have and have not. And it is no coincidence that we got here through policies of environmental racism and lack of community engagement. The people that live in this community for decades have been underinvested, disregarded, disrespected, and as a result, their education system, their community, and the air that they quite literally breathe is being affected every single day. And so this is an opportunity for the first time in a long time where we have amazing elected officials that represent this district, for all of us as a state, as a community, as stakeholders, that we all play together to come together and actually turn around a lot of the negative things that have been going on historically here in Rhode Island and use this opportunity for good. So I appreciate everybody here coming out, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you. My name is Gerard, Catala, president of the NAACP Providence Branch. And I'd like to first thank Representative Batista and Senator Mack for putting this very important press conference on today, and for all the community leaders that came out. And behind me, I have my senator, Senator Ana Quezada. So we understand there's a fine line between legality and morality, and it's often distinguished or separated simply by the stroke of a pen. So while legally these scrap metal industries have been down here, we have to ask ourselves why. Who wrote that in? Who's allowing for that? And then we have to ask ourselves, well, morally, is it right? Now, one can argue that these scrap metals are strategically placed here right by the water. And what it does is it allows all the pollutants to go westward into the communities of color. While we just mentioned earlier that the east side and East Providence have the barrier of the water and the salt protecting the pollutants from going in that direction. So I'd like to give you a real quick anecdote. Several years back, I rode from my house in South Providence to my grandmother's house on Hope Street. And I took a path. I came up Sackett Street, went down Broad Street, came to Allen's Ave, drove over the Point Street Bridge, on up to Hope Street. And upon my return, I took the same path back. And when you get over the bridge, the Point Street Bridge, that salt water kind of cleanses your palate. And that moment, when I pulled on the Allen's Ave and got back to the southwest side of the city, you could smell the pollutants. Horrible. You could smell the difference. So imagine living in that. And just like Rep. Batista said, he's been here for 35 years. I've lived in my community and in my ward for 45 years. So that means I've been ingesting this for 45 years. It's no wonder we have a higher allergy rate, a higher asthma rate. So if I can close with this, we need to make sure we can continue to build with allies like the 2 and 3 behind me for the community to make some decisions how that stroke of the pen moves forward. And with that said, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out.
Well, good morning. It's a wonderful morning to be here today. But one of the things is that the community is tired of nobody getting them on the table when they're making this kind of decision. And like Monica said, enough is enough. We understand that this community belongs to everyone, but at the same time, we just want them to take us in consideration, and when they're making decisions, to sit down with us, let us know what's going on, because many times, like Representative Batista said, we find out through the news, we find out in a tweet, we find out in Facebook, through all the direction, not because anybody take us in consideration and let us know when one of these social services are coming up when they was doing this. I don't understand how the city council was able to make that decision at the last minute when the city council was coming, a new city council coming in, and they said at the beginning, oh, we're going to wait for the new city council coming for them to make the decision, and then at last minute they decide that that wasn't good enough for them and they were going to make the decision anyway. Then I believe that we are tired of not taking us in consideration. We are tired of that they do whatever they want with our community, and that we are tired of making decisions without the community even know about it. And as us, we represent this neighborhood. I've been living in this neighborhood for more than 35 years, and we are being here and we've seen what happened through the years, and it's same thing over and over again. And we wanted to ask them, before they make any decision, come to us, talk to us. We can be our partners. We can tell them what we want to see in our community, how we want to see our community. And I agree with I echo all the concern that everybody said here, but one of the things is true. If you go to the east side or you go to East Providence, you see a huge different community. We are not second-hand community members in this neighborhood. We pay the same or enough taxes for like everybody else does. Then we need to be taken in consideration too, and they need to sit down at the table with us at the same time they do it with anybody else. Because I can tell you, see, that would happen in the south and the east side, that would not happen. Because people, they will listen to them, but they not take us in consideration at all when they're making this kind of decision. And thank you everyone for being here this morning.
Senator, how are things going to change?
Well, I think the first step is, one, we've asked for a halt of all of these projects, and then we're asking for meaningful community engagement. We're asking to be partners with state agencies, officials, PPSD, RIDE, DEM, and with other agencies. We're asking to be thought partners. We're asking to have community leaders and community members be meaningfully engaged. I think that's part of the change that we're hoping to see. Nothing about us, this community, without us, this community.
And being that Providence Public Schools are run by the state right now, why do you think anyone has been unsuccessful in bringing these concerns back to the State House?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons is that, again, the community has not been treated as a partner in these decisions. Many of the decisions that have happened, and we've been able to have meaningful and productive conversations with RIDE, and we're happy that myself and Rep. Batista have been able to have one-on-one conversations, but it's not just about us as elected officials, it's about the community having a stake and being stakeholders in the decisions that will shape the future and education of their young people.
So RIDE has been criticized for not listening to the community throughout the whole process of the the Providence Schools takeover, and 5 of the 7 members of the Central Falls Schools Board of Trustees resigned, claiming that they just were not being heard at all from RIDE either. Do you, taking that into account and your own personal experiences, do you have confidence that RIDE might start listening to the community?
I can only have hope, and we have to put that hope into action.
That's right.
Every single day we have to demand, not just ask, that we are treated as stakeholders and that we are treated as thought partners in the decisions that shape the fabric of this community and will have long-lasting impacts decades from now. That is the hope, that we are treated and respected as thought leaders and as community members with decisions that will, again, shape the future of the communities that live here.
What specifically are the projects that have to be halted that you need to have input into?
Yes, the closure of Shawn Feinstein Elementary School, the halt of the expansion of RI Recycling Metals, and any proposal of a transition housing project that has been rumored to be at 1144 Eddy Street.
And so I can't remember if it was you or Representative Batista, but what you've mentioned that the 1144 Eddy Street was on a list. What list are you referring to specifically?
So, there were neighbors in our community that this has been kind of through the grapevine, and that's part of the problem. It's unofficial, we don't know, but what we have learned is that, I can't answer your question directly because the reality is I don't know. People are not telling me directly, but we either see something on Twitter, we hear something from the news, there's people who have friends who work in government, and there's been a whisper through the grapevine that a prominent building in Washington Park is being considered for the state to expand their shelter footprint. That in and of itself is not a problem. I don't want to be misconstrued or misinterpreted. We are in no way, shape, or form anti-homeless community. If anything, we want to be helpful, we want to be part of the solution. But that's exactly it. We want to be part of the solution. And if we pay attention to the trajectory of things that have happened, the school closure happening without his input, the purchase of the land by Recycled Metals without us knowing anything, we are not going to wait until this happens. We want it to be clear now.
Yes.
And so that's my answer to that.
Yes, and to be clear, there's also another homeless shelter, Crossroads, Rhode Island, which is also expanding, and we're very supportive of that expansion. And these are not neighbors who are saying not in our backyard. These are neighbors that see that the treatment of our homeless and houseless population and housing insecure population aren't already receiving adequate resources, and they are then put into the streets because they're only homeless day shelters. They're put in the streets without access to quality wraparound services, without access to permanent supportive housing, mental health resources, and addiction resources. And it's becoming a problem not only for those residents of these transition facilities, but it also is bleeding into the community, causing further blight and causing a further notion and seeing visually every single day that the people of South Providence are not cared about and their resources are not being put into those communities. So the idea of having a community conversation is, what are the resources needed right now to make sure that the most vulnerable Providence residents who are in South Providence, who are overwhelmingly Black and brown, Spanish speakers, who are some of the most low-income people in our city, are given tools to make sure that every single social service program thrives in their neighborhoods and is an integral part and woven into the fabric of their communities and not just put on the side of their communities.
We want to share responsibility with our community.
Yes.
I wanted to just say two things on my behalf to conclude. One, sadly, about 2 years ago, Senator Mack and I had probably one of the most difficult days of our tenure as representatives. One of the worst shootings happened here in South Providence, in the history of the city of Providence, happened here in South Providence. There were no casualties, but 8 young men were involved and were shot. When that happened, there were a lot of people in our community who wanted to speculate. Why did this happen? How did this happen? Oh my God, what a surprise. Well, I'll tell you what, it's not a surprise when you look at the collection of all these things happening. You can't defund our community and then wonder why young people resort to such tragic outlets to express themselves. I'm not justifying what happened, but when everybody's here putting a microphone in our face asking why young people are shooting each other, we need to take a step back and look at the totality of the circumstances. And the second and final thing I wanted to say, I wanted to recognize some of the members of the community here. I don't think we've mentioned Maya, who's being all the way there in the back, and Jeremy. I think Maya put together a video about Imagine, right? Imagine what Broad Street School could look like. And I think if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But I want to push that a little bit further. Imagine what this port could look like. Just a few yards over there, there's a nice boat that takes people from Providence to Newport. Imagine a bunch of kids from the South Side being able to get on a boat here and go down to Newport. Why don't we deserve that? I know we deserve that.
Yeah.
And so I want to thank everybody who's been a part of this and push us all to imagine, what could this district look like if we all came together, if we were honest, if we were proactive and invested what this community deserves. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here, and especially to the community.
And thank you, Rep. Sanchez, as well.
So the scrap metal, industry, obviously, it's quite large here. What would an ideal world look like to sort of?
What was that?
What would an ideal solution or world look like to you with this the scrap metal yard here and what you're currently dealing with this community?
So an ideal world, not too long ago, this used to be a public beach right here. There used to be waterfront access for every single resident in South Providence. One of my friends who lives in Washington Park sent me photos of the old beach, teeming with people from Providence. That no longer exists. Most folks don't even know that Collier Point Park is open to the public.
Which is why we're doing this here
Which
today.
is why we're here today. We've chosen this location. There's another park, Drummond Field, that is used for soccer. There's Columbia Park, which is right on the port. We want what every other place that surrounds the port has. And the East Bay Bike Path. There's a dock that goes onto the water. If you go up to Patuxent Village, there are beachfront homes and property right on the water. Why is that reality possible for those neighbors on that same port, but not right here in South Providence?
Do you see a world where they can coexist, or would you ideally like it to be one?
I see a world where we get the same exact treatment as our neighbors right across the water and folks half a mile up the street right in Patuxent Village. That world is possible, and we know that because it exists for neighbors that don't look like the black and brown voices that live here right now.
People mention, things like asthma and allergies living in this area for the last 30, 40 years. If this expansion happens, if more development comes into these areas, what's the concern, what's the fear for, the next generation, 60
This is the higher asthma situation in the entire state. And if we continue the way we're going, it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. We're going to have more health issues with children and parents. And that's why we need to stop. And that's why we are doing what we're doing this morning.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Can I say something? Imagine what it could look like. There was a conversation I had with the Office of Sustainability. We wanted to imagine continuing the bike path in the scenic walkway from India Point Park to Mike Van Leesen Bridge, down here, and connect from behind the electric company, behind the Gentleman's Club, through here, and to the end of Public Street. And we had hopes to go even beyond Public Street to what is now owned by Rhode Island Metals, sadly, 288. There's a street that goes between 288 and where Narragansett Improvement Company was illegally dumping asphalt for years that we stopped. So imagine what it could look like if we had equal treatment and it was a cleaner environment. It all it takes is money and brains and vision. But we need vision, and we need to turn words into action.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
What's the address of the new Rhode Island recycling site?
The 1144 Eddy Street.
Oh, no.
No, that's...
The meadow?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have the exact
No.
name.
I think it is.
Okay.
But
235 Eddy?
it's
No, Allen.
Allen. 288 Allen's Avenue is also
I can give you the
owned
numbers
by
after.
them, which I thought was owned by the state. And next door is where the illegal dumping of the asphalt was. And then there's the Cumberland Farms land. That 9.3 acres was owned by Cumberland Farms. It was a warehouse. Now they own that, $2.3 million.
Thank you so much, everybody. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.